Buzz, 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 and welcome back to the Yellowjackets Hive for the 5th episode of Hive After Dark, covering the 6th episode of season 3 of Yellowjackets. And I'm your host, Emily, and let me just say, wow, my heart is officially broken after that episode. I don't know about all of you, but when I tell you that I sobbed watching this episode, that is no exaggeration whatsoever. I bawled like a complete baby over this episode. More so than I even did watching Key, which I know was a really hard episode for a lot of people to watch. This episode was a doozy, and we've now officially lost 2 major cast members in between 3 episodes of this season, which is kind of crazy. Granted, the deaths happened in different timelines, but both were still incredibly impactful. And this week, we'll be diving in and covering episode 306 titled Thanksgiving Canada. And I've seen a lot of interesting speculation on social media as to what this episode title could possibly have to do with. And someone on Reddit pointed out that in 1997, the Canadian Thanksgiving actually took place. Hi, Angie. Hi, Sarah. The Canadian Thanksgiving actually took place on October 13th, which coincidentally is also the same day that the Andes plane crash happened back in 1972. Which I thought that detail was super cool, and they had to have planned that on purpose. But we got some answers and more questions. Happy Sunday. Can't wait for your Yellowjackets tea. So much to speak about. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about this week. But before we get into that, I have someone joining me for part of the discussion this week. His name is Danny, and he has served as an editor for season 3 of the show and for the previous seasons as well. He specifically worked on episodes 2 and 6 this season, which is why he's joining us this week to give us a little insight on what makes what I personally think the best episode that we've seen so far for this season. So let's bring Danny on to join us. Hi, Danny.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for best episode of the season. I don't know if I'd go that far. The other 3 editors on the show do great work. Don't want to take anything away from them.
That's fair. It was a gut punch. That's the best way I can describe it. Even though we kind of suspected it was coming, it was still really hard to watch happen.
Yeah,
somebody's asking
a lot.
Does he know who lost the season 2 footage?
I'm not going to talk about that. That is
fair.
No comment on anything from season 2.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. I know the fandom really loves getting to hear from anybody that has a hand in creating this show. So guys, feel free to pop your questions in the chat for Danny as we go. I'm just going to start asking him the questions that I have, but I will pull up some random ones that you guys put in there to ask him too. So for those who aren't familiar, what do you exactly do as an editor for a TV show?
So as the footage is getting shot each day, so if it's shot on Monday, the footage comes in on Tuesday, and our assistants pretty much bring it into the system, organize it, and then we start cutting scenes right away.
Wow.
So while shooting's happening, we're usually a day behind set, and then we get a few days after shooting's wrapped for the episode before we send a cut to the director. Then we get about a week or so with the director before we send it off to the producers. That's when we work with Jonathan and Ashley Bart to get the show into shape before we send it off to Showtime and in the past E1, where we would then get notes and go back and forth a few times. So it's really taking the raw footage, all the takes of the show, and kind of putting it together, adding temp sound, temp music, working directly with the showrunners and directors to kind of make the right choices.
Yeah, you bring up the sounds and the music. Somebody actually specifically asked do you have any say in the music that is used and curated for each episode, like pairing it with the scenes, the specific scenes? Like, do you have a hand in any of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
We work really closely, and Yellowjackets is great to have Nora Felder on.
Yeah,
who's an amazing music supervisor, she'll give us 4 or 5 choices for a scene if we're asking for one, or sometimes she'll look at the scripts and just kind of give us prearranged bins where she thinks like, oh, for this moment, here's a list of songs, like this might be a good spot for a needle drop, which is what we usually call a song opposed to normal score.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll give us some options. Other times, I'll just call her up and be like, hey, Nora, we think we want to use a needle drop for this. Do you have any suggestions? If I have any ideas, I might throw them out there. Sometimes the showrunners, we call them Jab, Jonathan Ashley Bart.
Yeah.
So Jab has an option, has ideas, so like we'll get Nora to pull that, and we'll just throw it into the cut and try it.
That's so fun.
For the big scene on this one, I think we, with Natalie and Ben, we only previewed like one other song that was a little too romantic once we got in with the producers, and then we found this slow song that worked so well.
I thought the song choice for the scene was perfect. I really did. It set the mood so well. As soon as the music started, I started crying before anything even happened. It just fit so perfectly.
And other times, it comes all the way from set. So in season 2, I worked on episode 7 when young Shauna beats down Lottie, and the White Lightning song was actually all the way from set. On set they needed to play something. I think somebody had on set the idea of White Lightning, and it actually stuck all the way through, which does not always happen.
Wow.
So the music kind of comes from all over the place. People on set, people in post, and obviously Nora has something.
She has done a phenomenal job. The soundtrack for each season has just been so stellar. The music is a big reason why I love the show so much. So that's really cool. And to speak more to the sound design is such a huge part of the show's intensity. Like, how do you collaborate with the sound team to make sure everything like works? How does that work?
So you mean more like sound effects and like things like that? So typically during the offline process, when I'm working on the show, we'll do temp sound, and sometimes a lot of times I can get pretty elaborate the temp. But usually we're working with sound effects that we have on a hard drive somewhere before we send it off to the mixing stage, where they have huge libraries of songs or sound effects, and sometimes they'll even do some Foley. So it's kind of in that, we make it sound how we think it should. Sometimes we'll actually get notes on temp sound and make adjustments just so that when it goes to the final mix that they'll have the right idea. But then they go in there and they clean it up. And make it sound way better. Yeah. And then we just come in at the end. There's a final mix playback, and just kind of make sure it's all honed in. We'll give like one final pass of notes on the mix, and just go from there.
Somebody in the chat is asking, is there anything you can tell us about the dripping water sound we are hearing again this season?
I cannot tell you. Sorry. I don't want to spoil. I'm huge on no spoilers. Like, I don't even watch trailers or next-ons or any of that.
Wow.
I'll make sure I won't tell you anything.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Awesome. Somebody said awesome choices on the soundtrack for all the seasons. Do you have any idea if we may ever get to see some of this legendary deleted scenes from season 2? Like, will they ever release that for anyone?
Right. I cannot comment on the bonus episode.
No.
Or any talk about it. I would love to. But I am not allowed.
Somebody is asking, is that straw hat behind you a sign you're a One Piece fan?
I actually worked on season 1 of One Piece, the Netflix show.
Okay.
You can see I have a little frame up there. These are a bunch of shows I've worked on. But I worked on season 1, assisting and editing on episodes 1 and 2.
Cool. Do you have any hand in the different filters that are used on the show? Like, for example, this season, the show seems to almost have like a yellowish tone to it, specifically in the teen timeline. And this seems very intentional, and it's kind of like a stark contrast to the way that things looked last season. Everything looked so dim and depressing last season, and it looks a lot brighter this season.
No, I don't have a hand in that. That is much more on the color grading part of things. So usually on set, the DIT, when they're prepping the footage, will put like what we call a LUT, which is just like a basic color grade, so that we can work with it and it doesn't look terrible. But then once we finish and we edit the show, they'll up-res everything to the full 4K or whatever they're shooting that.
Yeah.
And then they will color grade that, and that is done with Jab's input and the producers. However, I'm pretty sure it was absolutely intentional feel, because as and we skipped a lot of the time, but we were going from like middle of winter, dim and dark, everything going down to kind of like new beginning, spring, things were on the up and up.
Yeah.
So
it was a nice breather from the suffocating depression from last season. I mean, the subject matter is obviously not sunshine and roses, but it just seemed a little happier for them.
I mean, the village is pretty sunshine and roses. I feel like they did a pretty good job with an old dusty book.
Yeah, that book has made me ask a lot of questions. You spoke a little earlier about the fact that you start with the raw footage and go from there. So how much footage do you typically work with for like one episode?
For one episode, it's hard to. What's the best measurement to even give? Of compressed footage, we get about 100 to 150 gigabytes a day, but that's not really helpful. It really depends on the day. For a big scene, but like a bigger action scene, for instance, we're likely to get a lot more footage, something a bit more like frenetic energy, opposed to, let's say, the Sadecki family in the hotel. That's a lot less footage. We'll get a couple takes, and it's not that much.
That makes sense.
But it depends. On great shows like this one, we don't tend to get a ton of extra stuff. So, some shows I've been on, you might get 8 or 9 takes of a shot. And luckily, we've got it pretty nailed into like 4, maybe 5 if it's an important moment. Usually.
Oh, okay.
So we're not getting, take after take after take after take, where we're like having to go through all of this to kind of find the right read. But we get quite a bit. Again, on some days it feels like more than others.
I'm sure.
But it's not on one episode. Yeah, I don't know how I'd measure it other than like gigabytes, which is a lot.
That is a lot. I'm not super tech savvy, but I know that that's a lot.
And it's very compressed when we get. We get like a compressed high definition. We're not getting the full 4K UHD footage that comes to our base.
Somebody is asking, how many shows do most editors work on simultaneously at any given time?
One. Definitely. You might have some overlap on the front end or the back end, as long as everyone's on board and okay with that. But it is, so during the beginning, like that editor's cut, during dailies, we're very busy. Like those are going to be the days where we work the most. We're putting the show together from nothing. The sound design music takes forever, trying to figure out the pacing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're kind of have to be available to directors and producers whenever they have time.
Yeah.
And then when we have time with them, then we have to go through and do the notes afterwards and do a bunch of cleanup. So there's just not a lot of room for double dipping in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you next, which is how do you collaborate with the directors, writers, and producers during the editing process?
When you say how to, what do you mean?
Like just when you start the editing process, like how are they involved? Like in what capacity?
So on most shows, we'll have a tone meeting. So let's say 2 weeks before shooting starts, we'll have like a 2 to 4 hour meeting where I'll usually zoom in, and the director is talking to the writers or the showrunners and asking them questions like, what is this character feeling? Why is this happening? What is the subtext of the scene? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we'll take a bunch of notes on that, and that's really my first input. During dailies, I may text the director a couple times just to like ask a quick question if I have it, intention on what a shot was for, that kind of thing. But in general, we're mostly by ourselves during that process. The dailies and the editor's cut is a lot of like, on a show like Yellowjackets that I've worked on since season 1, I know the show pretty well. I know the characters well, so I can kind of read the scripts and I already kind of see where it's going. When it's a newer show, and especially if it's a season 1 show, it's a lot harder as you're still trying to kind of find it and figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And I have worked on things where, you see the script, you do a cut, and they're like, I see why you did this. Completely wrong for what we want. And you kind of have to dial it back and just take the scene or the whole show, hopefully not, in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
So it's not in that beginning process. And then at the end, it's a lot of like, okay, looking at different takes. Maybe they want a performance that's a little bit angrier in that moment, or maybe they just disagree that a particular read or a particular cut or angle or shot or whatever is translating the same thing that maybe I felt like it did in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's just, there are times where I will sit and defend my choices and be like, no, I really think this is better or more powerful, this pace is better, etc. And then there are other times where I'm like, great point, this is why it's collaborative, other people have great ideas.
Yeah.
And luckily, it's a pretty collaborative room with Yellowjackets. Everyone in the room has a voice. My assistant pops in every once in a while with good ideas, and that's always welcomed. Everyone appreciates that.
Yeah.
He even cut some scenes.
Cool.
And did a really good job. So,
I mean, the minds that work on the show are so creative with the plot that we've been given. The writers are just like, the things that they're throwing at us this season are crazy and things that I never expected. So
definitely a page turner. It was fun reading all the scripts as they came out this year.
Oh, I'm sure. I can only imagine what it's like to read them before you actually see it play out, and they actually shoot it. How do you use editing to enhance the storytelling and mood of a show like Yellowjackets?
Yeah, well, that's where all the tension comes from.
Yeah.
A great example, right, is the Shauna bathroom scene in 302.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nothing scene. She walks into a stall, someone walks out, she's kind of bugged out by it, she freaks out.
Yeah.
Right, but then you have to elongate that. We threw in that like big jump cut when the lights go out. And there's different things you can do to kind of like up intensity and up the tension of it. There's a lot of communication you can do by cutting to certain characters when they're not speaking to get like that look or that reaction to kind of help move things in that direction and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this show gets really weird. We have a lot of weird scenes.
Yeah.
So, a lot of those scenes, in the caves, especially this season.
Yeah.
I mean, they shoot a ton of stuff and then we just kind of figure it out in the edit room. And, sometimes there's more clear directions. Like in 303, I think those were very clear moves. And Jeff Israeli, editor for 3, had to do a lot of work to make that all go together.
Yeah.
And then for other things like 306 and Aquila in the cave with the stop motion bear was like, well, here's some stuff. And it's just like, okay. to see if I can make it cool. And, then you kind of work with the producers and refine from there.
That bear was really interesting and has had a lot of people wondering, like, what's up with that? Just because we haven't seen anything like that really on the show yet. Like the stop motion, the way that it looked, I mean.
Yeah, I've gotten 2 really interesting scenes in the theater scene with Misty's vision and adult Misty in 7 of season 2 and now this stop motion bear. So it's always fun.
Yeah, that has to be fun, filming or helping create scenes like that. Have there been any scenes that were particularly challenging for you to edit? I will say as a viewer that watching Natalie put that knife through Coach Ben's heart, like, it crushed me.
Yeah, that scene came out to be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Strangely, that scene not so hard to edit. I think they did such a good job with the performances there, Steven and Natalie's actor. Sophie, thank you.
Yeah, she killed it.
It's hard because we always think of them as their character names. I prefer them as Natalie and Ben all the time. They did such a good job in that it was difficult to edit in that it was just trying to make it the most emotional it could be. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes what ends up being the harder scenes to edit are those little in-between scenes that we're just trying to like make as economical as possible.
Yeah.
There's a scene from season 1 that always comes to mind. That was a particularly difficult scene when adult Thaisa does not jump out of the race like she said. And it said the press conference where she goes, so I cut that scene when I was still an assistant, and I was cutting that scene for my editor. And man, I worked with Bart and Ashley and Jonathan for days on that scene. It was so difficult. Yeah, it was. We had to really make something out of nothing because it was just kind of a flat scene. And
that's absolutely challenging.
Yeah, so it ends up being the ones you're not really thinking about.
Yeah.
Or there's the times where it's just like, oh man, just for whatever reason on this day, an actor just didn't do the same thing with their hands at the time.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well that means like now I got to try to like piece these performances together and try to get the beats that we want with the emotion that we want, and do it without anybody mixing.
Yeah. I didn't even think
So
about
those
stuff
tend to
like
be
that.
harder than the bigger scenes. The bigger scenes, it's kind of like once they come together, they're, on this show especially, they just work because
Yeah.
the concepts work.
Yeah. And I mean, the cast is just, the casting department is so phenomenal on this show. The casting is, it may be the best casting of any show that I personally watched, in my opinion. It just, the comparisons between the teens and the adults are just so spot on, and they each mirror each other in ways that like they don't even realize that they're doing, which is what makes it so good.
Yeah.
Somebody is asking, how does recasting affect your job as an editor?
Well, often I don't even know about the recast until day one. So
Okay.
there's a little bit of, wait, who's that? And, oh, okay, that somebody had to get recast. I think it would be a bigger deal if it happened with a character who was already like front and center.
Yeah.
It hadn't been. I think Akila was probably the biggest recast from season 1 to 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But in season 1, her role was a little bit more minor, and then in season 2, she got a bit more, and in season 3, she got a bit more. So it doesn't really affect us much, other than just kind of establishing, like, okay, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And moving on. I personally haven't been a part of a big recast of like a main character.
No.
That is somebody who's like really like, if Shauna Sadecki got.
Yeah, that would be.
If Melanie dropped out,
yeah,
that would be an impossible recast.
Yeah, that would be very noticeable.
Yeah.
Somebody else is asking for a survey with 2 timelines. How critical is continuity for your job as an editor?
When you're talking about continuity between timelines and story-wise, really important. And we talk about that a lot of like, when did something happen, or wait, a character already knows about this, or like this doesn't make sense because this happened, that kind of thing. I imagine that was more the question opposed to continuity as far as like where someone's hand was, or if they are wearing.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Yeah, because I mean, you all have to have noticed by now that we as a fan base notice everything. So I'm sure that probably makes it a little more challenging for you too, just because we're paying attention to details that you probably didn't think we would care about at all.
Well, that always happens. I typically say though, if people are catching those kinds of details, then people like your show. No one's watching closely enough to catch something not off like that unless they really love the show.
I agree.
It was really big in season 1 between timelines, because we were still establishing, that the teens and the adults were the same people.
Yeah.
So there was a lot more like cutting from Misty to Misty, intentionally trying to adjust scenes to maybe cut from Sean to Sean or Natalie to Natalie, and really do a lot of that in the first season. And then as the season's gone on, we don't do it quite as often, but we still try to do it whenever we can, because it's usually a really good one.
Yeah. Do you have any tricks that you use to connect the 2 timelines through editing, like to make it seem like seamless, the transitions between the 2, I guess?
When we can do stuff like character on character, I think that's usually like the best way. Anytime we can get like a Shauna to Shauna or a Misty to Misty, I think those transitions tend to work really well.
Yeah. Those are.
We don't do a ton of complicated transitions in this show. We do every once in a while. We'll have like a good fade to black where like the camera just pans through a wall and suddenly you're in the team time.
Yeah.
But we don't have too many weird tricks. I guess like season 2 we had a lot of the phrasing and like the lines, but that was more for hallucination stuff. Not so much for timeline stuff.
Yeah. With Yellowjackets being such a mystery box style show, how do you decide when to reveal key information versus like hold back a little bit for suspense?
That is not up to me. No. And often it's interesting because, I obviously know some things that are going to happen this season. Yeah. But I also know some things that might happen in season 4. Yeah. And in the beginning, while they're still writing scripts when the show first starts up, right? They're shooting episode 1. They're still probably writing the back half of the season, or at least finalizing scripts. They have the general thing out. And it's helpful for us to know kind of where some storylines are going. For instance, like that phone. Right? In episode 2, like I needed to know where that was going so that I could not do the wrong thing.
That makes sense.
that's more of where my part comes into it, is just knowing where things are going so that maybe I can make it a little bit better by maybe giving like a little bit of a hint.
Yeah.
Or, and maybe if it's something more character based in that phone, it's like maybe you cut to a certain person or to a certain look to either misdirect or
Mm-hmm.
or kind of play your hand a little bit. Those moments can happen, but it's definitely not up to us. Like I might do it because I might think it's a good idea, but like that is very much Jab's purview of when to reveal things and how to do it.
Gotcha. Do you ever experiment with different versions of scenes to test like what creates the best suspense?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has to be fun.
It can be. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's because you don't really know what the scene's supposed to be yet. So sometimes it's like, I'm going to try this. And then you do it and you spend a couple hours on it and you're like, this is garbage. And then you throw it away and you try again. And other times it's like, this is working pretty well. But we don't actually have a lot of notes. So let's just like spend some time to play with it with a director or a producer, whomever. It's just like, let's just mess around. And sometimes you find gold and sometimes you just put it back with it.
Yeah. Trial and error.
Yeah.
Somebody is asking, are there any clues that he thinks no one has caught yet?
Yes.
I'm sure there have to be.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the fan base is well aware that several of us read Reddit regularly. So it's always really fun to jump on there every week and see everybody's theories and the little things people have caught and the things that people think they've caught that they're way off. So yeah, there are little things, little hints of where certain storylines are going, what's happening with certain characters. We put in as many as we can as we go to try to put in little nuggets and see if anybody finds them. Yeah.
Reddit is a gold mine, in my opinion, for that kind of stuff. There's just like the community there is just so big for the show. And
the theories are outlandish sometimes.
It is. Like, I don't know where they come up with some of these theories. I think I'm pretty creative, but these people blow me out of the water. Like they are.
Every once in a while, we read one where we're like, okay, who working on the show talks to whose Reddit account is this? Because this is like very close to what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Granted, we keep all that internal because we wouldn't want to.
Yeah. Somebody just said we were all mind blown with the bird watchers. Don't think one person ever theorized that one.
I know, right? That was a fun one.
That was wild. That was the last.
I would love to comment a little bit more on it, but there's so little of it in 6.
Yeah,
you're going to get so much better stuff moving forward that I wouldn't want to spoil it. Yeah, the people who show up, I'll refer to them that way. That is definitely a crazy moment, and man, did he nail that! What the fuck at the end?
Oh my gosh, it was perfect. I said that out loud when he came on screen, and then he said it right after I said it. It's like, that is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't think for such an emotional episode. I remember when we watched it with Ashley the first time, especially, and you go from this like super emotional sequence of Natalie and Ben, and Natalie's kind of aftermath, and then Misty's weird aftermath, right? And you get it's like 8 minutes of just intense emotion right after that vision with Aquila, and then like, where's the episode going? 10 minutes later, people show up again.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
that was, nobody was expecting that. Like, I don't think anyone had that on their Yellowjackets season 3 bingo card.
It was a fun one, specifically that moment and kind of how big it was. Because at one point when Bart first saw the scene with Natalie and Ben, he started to worry that we didn't do Ben justice and that should be an episode ender. He was just like, it was so good. They did the performances were so solid.
Yeah.
But we talked about, like, but that's kind of what's nice about it is like, what could possibly happen that's a bigger moment than that?
Yeah.
And then it kind of like, for another 15 minutes of the show or however long the time is now, and it ends up being quite a big hit.
Yeah. It was a huge episode, like, not just because we lost Coach Ben, like, those people show up. So 2 huge major things happen.
And a couple more subtle things of like Lottie getting to hear the wilderness again. She's been kind of shut out of the wilderness since season 2, and she's finally starting to feel connected again.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is not a small thing.
The performances in Yellowjackets are incredibly nuanced. do you ever find yourself making edits to emphasize certain emotions or reactions from the characters on the show?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's most of the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's finding the performances, the reactions. It's great when they're doing things right away. In the moment where like we're talking and you just happen to react great to something I said.
Mm-hmm.
But other times you have to kind of go through the entire take or several takes and kind of pull like that right look, that one that just hits a little bit harder, or the line that's just a little bit more cutting for like a Shauna,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That
But yeah, I mean that's where we live is kind of trying to find, if we have 4 or 5 takes of one angle, well, we have 4 or 5 takes of like 4 to 5 angles. So it's like, we have all the lines in a row and we can just kind of look at each performance and kind of, it's like, all right, well, we know it needs to be a close up. So let's look at all the close ups. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe it can be a medium shot and we can punch in a little bit. Let's see if there's anything good there. And, that's the job.
Do you ever use improvised moments that end up making the final cut into an episode? I'm pretty sure I read that Melanie Linsky did improv in an episode in season 1. Like, I remember the scene where she has Thais sleep over at her house and they have the conversation in Kelly's bedroom. I read that their conversation was improvised. Is that true?
That was not my episode, and I'm not 100% on that,
Okay.
but we absolutely use improv lines occasionally. Even Thaisa saying "what the fuck" at the end of the car, listening to the tape in 6.
Yeah.
That wasn't scripted. That was just like a good button on the end of that scene.
Yeah.
So all the times, like usually it's shorter stuff. We don't usually go into like long spiel improv, but we also don't get a lot of that. They're not usually doing full conversations off the cuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, improv stuff goes all the time. Sometimes it's hilarious or better than what was originally.
I'm sure, yeah. Is there anybody that's like particularly good at improvising, like more so than others?
I think I think at least in the episodes I've worked on, there's been a little bit more of the occasional improv line in the adult timeline, and it's usually funnier stuff. So it tends to be kind of the Jeffs, the Shaunas, the Misties in the adult timeline. Who will just say kind of like a random off the wall comment at the end. And then we'll put that line there usually like at the end of the season or at the end of the scene or stuff like that.
Yeah. Somebody is asking, do you have a favorite episode or scene or storyline? One that you worked on editing or not?
I think this one's pretty great. I think as far as the ones I've worked on, I think this episode is really good. I really enjoyed I think episode 2 from season 2 is also really high up there.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And that's kind of when they eat Jackie. It's kind of hard to think about season 1 because season 1 was like on such a different. It was like no one knew what it was yet. Like we all liked it. We all thought it was pretty good. We were all whispering it could be a hit, but like no one really knew how it would be received. Like the plane crash episode. That was the first episode I worked on, and like that was a great episode. Right?
Oh my gosh, one of the best episodes of TV I've ever watched.
Young Missy just cutting off Ben's leg. The first week we're shooting is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this, toot my own horn. I think this episode's really good. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a turning point in the series. The first death that was unnecessary, definitely the first cannibalism that was unnecessary. So it's a little bit of a turning point in that regard.
Yeah, they ate him and they didn't need to eat him. Like that's new.
I'm definitely partial, I think, to the team timeline. I think that's where you're getting all the gruesome stuff.
Yeah.
And so if I had to really narrow it down, I think young Shauna and young Misty are very close to me. I think those two characters in their younger forms are really interesting, particularly Misty, I guess.
Misty's my favorite.
I think the writers and the actors do such a good job really laying the groundwork for what her trauma is out of all of this and how her trauma is potentially so much different than the rest. Like everyone else is traumatized by what's happening. I think Misty's just traumatized because she wants a friend.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good way to put it. So what's an episode or moment that you're especially proud of from an editing perspective?
I think that white lightning intercut in season 2 when Shauna's beaten down and the adults dance around the fire, that was really cool.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
Between that and getting to cut the opening of that episode to a Nirvana song was pretty neat.
Love that song choice. Absolutely love that one.
Yeah, that was a fun one where we didn't think we could afford it, and then to find out we could was very exciting.
Oh,
I got to call my friends and be like, I'm literally cutting this scene to Nirvana right now.
I love Nirvana.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, the music is just top notch. Like, I'm a huge 90s fan, so I love all the music on the show. It's great. Are Bart and Ashley, do they happen to be big Cranberries fans? Because they use a lot of Cranberries songs.
I don't know, probably. Ashley and Bart are into some off the wall stuff. They like musically. They like a lot of stuff that ends up working really well for the show, which probably makes sense because it's their creation.
Yeah.
But it's just like, oh, you wrote Yellowjackets, you created it. Like, you guys okay? And they're great. But they're probably a big Cranberries fan. A lot of their taste in music ends up in the show, for sure.
Yeah.
Nora, I know, will talk to Ashley and Bart about music. And then she'll be like, oh, I know that this has been on Ashley's list for a while. If we could sneak this in here. So I've had it on the back burner. Let's try it for this scene. Like, that's definitely happened where we're like, oh, we know Ashley loves this song, or we know Bart loves this song. So let's just try it. Yeah. And it might not work for 5 scenes, and then we might find out where it actually fits into it.
Oh, somebody's asking, did you edit Luciano falling through that ice pond? But you said you didn't say you worked on that episode.
No, right? I did not. That was episode 9? That was Kevin Ross working on that episode.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a.
Well, what is your favorite Yellowjackets editing Easter egg that fans might not have noticed?
Easter egg that you might not have noticed?
Is there one that we haven't noticed?
Hard to think of one. Yeah. Well, and it's also hard to think of like what might be a nice little hidden thing
that doesn't spoil anything.
Doesn't spoil anything. Yeah. This is one, Emily, where you should have emailed me this one beforehand. I would have given it some profile.
I'm sorry.
Nothing's coming to the top of my head. Like little. I think everybody noticed it, but I really love bringing back the lip telephone from episode 2, season 1, young Misty, when she was like even younger.
Oh yeah,
that was a fun little callback, bringing that one back.
I was personally a fan of seeing the kit and caboodle that they had the makeup in season 1. The little like
makeup kit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was
just
good.
Because that brought back memories from when I was younger.
Or the clear telephone. I'm very much
that one too. Yeah,
clear telephone with Van. I'm like, oh, I definitely seen my friends had that telephone.
Yep, I had friends that had a phone like that.
In fact, I believe, I don't know if it's the one we ended up using at the end, but I think at one point in the temp, we made sure we found that phone's actual ringtone for the ringing. But I think we may have changed it because it wasn't quite eerie enough for them. But I don't remember. I don't remember if it ended up lasting and making it all weird.
Allison is asking, did you work on 206 Key? The editing and emotions it brought out were phenomenal.
No, I was on 207 and 204 for season 2.
Gotcha.
So I was on when they tried and failed to get the moose out, and
that was heartbreaking too. So what has been your favorite moment from an editing perspective for episode 6?
For episode 6, it was probably the moment after Ben dies.
Yeah.
Getting to really live with Natalie's emotion there, and at first I had it, as kind of like so it's a little bit behind the scenes, right? A lot of times the first cut, before I send my cut to the director, it's very much, here's the script. Like you want to make the first cut, like show the director what they shot. I'm not like cutting out lines or rearranging things at that point. It's very much like, let's try to just give the show as a whole. And that was one where like I really lowered the volume of Travis and Misty talking outside the animal pen.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't really want to hear what they say at all. Like, none of this matters.
No.
And then when we got to later down the line, it was just like, let's just mute him completely. And I was just like, yes, because none of it matters. Like, oh, let's not cut to anybody. Let's just stay on. We have shots of Thaisa and Jen and a few other ones running up to Natalie in that moment, where she's making that promise.
Yeah.
And getting take those shots out because we don't care. Let's just stay with her. And then getting the transition that right into Misty and her weird moment with Ben before we get back to, Shauna being named later.
Yeah.
That was that end of the sequence there, I thought was just such a good button on the end of such an emotional moment there with them.
Yeah. I actually chuckled a little bit when Misty, right after Nat walks out of where Ben was, and she's like, murderer, arrest her.
Yeah, arrest her.
Yeah, arrest her. That
about as much legal authority as that as the courtroom scene in episode 4. It's like very. If only they had really gone true America and said innocent until proven guilty, then they would have had this whole 2/3 thing. But starving, crazed teenagers. What can you do?
Yep. What's your least favorite fan theory? Do you have one?
Yeah, I think this one's fine at this. Well, 2 actually. This is not a spoiler. I'm really thinking about it before I say it. That Adam was Javi. Yes. Back in season 1, people really thought Adam was Javi.
Yep.
And the one that seems to persist is that Jeff was not the blackmailer.
The blackmailer? No.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of posts about people saying that, like, oh no, there's no way Jeff was the blackmailer. Like, maybe it was such and such, or so. I'm like, guys, Jeff was the blackmailer. Like,
he admitted to it, though.
He admitted to it. Like, it's been established. But every once in a while, I still see it pop up. But they're like, there's no way. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, it does. Okay. I think that's probably it.
Someone's asking, oh my God, can he answer why Ben didn't try to bargain the supplies he found for his life and his freedom?
He didn't really have
those supplies.
Well, he didn't really have any cards. I mean, Mari knew those supplies existed.
Yeah.
They were at the cave. You have to imagine, and those are the kind of moments that I feel like, and this is would obviously be a better question for the writers, but I think it's justified to not show those kinds of scenes, right? Like, they went to the cave and they found Ben. You have to assume they would have taken all of his supplies back. He had ropes and obviously all the food supplies.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily. I don't know how much it does for the story to kind of walk through those moments.
Yeah.
In a show where we have such an ensemble cast. We're a lot of times really trying to fit things into being under an hour.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I'm like, the supplies are there. How many of the supplies left is a question, because now we've had a bit of a time jump in 306. But Ben really didn't have the power to negotiate anything because he was tied up with one leg, and those girls were going to take those supplies whether he wanted them to or not.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, this one you have to settle, because this is like one of my biggest questions about the show. Somebody said Jeff sent the text as blackmail, but didn't send the postcards, right?
Why? I'm not right. Why would that be right?
Like, we are under the impression that the blackmail and the postcards are 2 separate things.
They are not 2 separate things.
So the postcards are tied to Jeff.
Yes.
Again,
that was established.
Well,
the postcards were tied to the blackmail.
Well, a lot of people thought that he was responsible for the blackmail and the text messages, but that the postcards were a totally separate thing.
I am under the impression.
I mean, I know a lot of people were under that impression. I was under that impression too.
I could be wrong. I definitely did not the absolute authority on this. I see the comments. They think I'm totally wrong. I am like 85 to 90% sure that he sent the postcards. I might end up having the text to verify after this. But I'm fairly certain that all of those postcards, that was all related to the blackmail, and that was all Jeff using information he got out of Sharon's journals.
I just personally like.
Sorry, Sarah.
I can believe Jeff being behind the blackmail, but the postcards I just felt were like a little bit above Jeff's thought process.
Why is everybody hating on Jeff?
I
He has
love
a
Jeff. Like
thriving furniture selling
he's
business.
one of my favorite characters. I just didn't think that he would come up with something like that on his own.
Well, he did have Randy's own. For all that goes. I knew it when I said it. Yeah, I am under the impression, as far as I understand, the postcards and the blackmail are linked. It was all Jeff. Okay. Again, I could be wrong on that. No, Shauna did. I see Shauna did not get a postcard, and that's why.
That's why a lot. Yeah, that's why. Well, that's why some people think that he did send them, because she didn't get one. Why would he send one to her? But I just, like I said, I just didn't think that it was something that would ever cross his mind to do. I mean, he had access to her journals to look at the symbol, to copy it, to put it on the postcard like he did in the text message that he sent. But I don't know, like the fact that the postcards came from like an online app that like you couldn't track, and like there were all these like steps and details that were added that just seemed like Jeff wouldn't think about those things.
All right.
So that's why I thought that. But
I'm fairly certain that they were.
I will be wrong.
You have me questioning a little bit, but I'm pretty sure. Speaking of Jeff, by the way, I do love that in episode 2 we got to see him in his element a little bit. His sales pitch to the
Joels.
The Joels was actually pretty solid. I'm glad we kept a lot of it in, and just actually got to see Jeff on for a minute. Like the first time we've gotten to see him kind of killing it.
I love Warren Cole. He's so good.
And he really grew into it. He went from just being such a side character in season 1 to like such a favorite.
Yeah. The moment where he sits in the car in season 2 and jams out to Papa Roach just cracks me up so hard.
I can't not. Whenever I hear that song now, it's the only thing.
Yep.
It's like almost ruined the song for me, but not really ruined.
All right, guys. Well, if anybody else has any questions, pop them in here. But otherwise, I'm going to let you go because I've had you here for quite a while. But
yeah, no worries.
Thank you so much for buzzing in and hanging out and for answering all of our questions. Like I said, it's always so fun to talk to anybody that has a hand in creating the show and get a little bit of an inside scoop on what it takes to make the magic that we see on the screen. So hopefully we can do it again. I would love to have you back and have another chat.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, season 4 hasn't been officially renewed yet, but it should be going that way.
Yeah, that's one thing that we've all been discussing too, is the fact that it hasn't been renewed yet. But I don't think that means we have anything to be afraid of.
I'm not too worried about it.
No, I wouldn't. I didn't think so. Oh, one last thing. Steven said he believed Ben did burn down the cabin, and the editing is what made it seem vague. What do you think? Personally.
Yes, I think the editing made it seem vague. That was absolutely on purpose with Jeff. Israel was the editor for the finale last season. And it was meant to be vague. Obviously, Ben was meant to look like a culprit. Did he burn down the cabin? I think there are a lot of questions in this show that won't be answered, and I'm not sure that they should be answered.
Yeah.
I don't, that's where we get into more of my opinion opposed to where the show's actually going, because I don't know all of what we're going to answer on some of it.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll ever know if Ben actually did burn it down, because the only person who really knows was stabbed in the chest.
Yep. I agree. I think it's going to be one of those questions where it's up to us to really decide what we think.
I mean, hey, did we ever have the Yellowjackets cleaning out that chimney? How much soot had built up? It could have just been an old cabin.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. An ember could have flown out of the fireplace and just been in the right spot. Anything is possible.
Maybe Misty was feeling needy again and felt like she needed to do something to be more relied upon.
Yeah.
It's definitely her brand.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us, and I will let you go now so I can get into my recap aspect of things. But
it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for your input and your time.
Buzz, buzz, buzz.
Buzz, buzz, buzz. Bye, Dan. Well, that was so fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a great time. He gave us lots of really cool information, and it always makes me happy to talk to anybody that is involved in making the show. And to hear about what it takes to make the show from behind the screen as opposed to in front of the camera, it's just a totally different vibe. So mind blown about the postcards. Allison, I'm going to stick with what I think. Jeff didn't send them. I'm going to continue to believe that and not accept it. I said I would die on that hill. I need to find out from Ashley or Bart directly. Like, that's the only way that I will accept that information at this point. But to get into things, like I said last week, and in my live stream I did the other night, recapping the first half of season 3, I think that we've finally reached the point where they start to do things that we really don't want. They really don't want the general public finding out about, which makes me assume that these people that have somehow stumbled upon them are not long for this world. We can kind of deduce that just based off what we already know, that we know they aren't rescued until wintertime. And it's clearly not winter yet. So these people can't be responsible for their rescue, at least not yet anyways. So what do these people just live in the middle of the woods with them for a few months and then go and find help? Like, not a likely scenario in my book anyways. So the episode opens up with Shauna coming home from where's she coming from? It's 2 a.m. and she's replaying recent events in her head, hearing the Queen of Hearts song in her mind from the cell phone, and the imagining Jackie telling her that someone's trying to hurt her, and she finds Jeff waiting up for her. And like I just said, like, why was she out until 2 a.m.? Like, where was she? Like, do we actually know? And Shauna tells Jeff about Lottie. She says, disgraced cult leaders don't just fall down the stairs and die. And Callie overhears this conversation and she gets very upset. And I knew as soon as she got upset and said shit or whatever she said that she was going to go get that tape. And lo and behold, she comes out with the tape saying that maybe whoever sent it has something to do with what happened to Lottie. And I've seen a lot of people saying that they think that Callie could be behind what happened to Lottie. But why would she offer up the tape to her mom if she thinks those things are connected? If she was the only one that was really behind Lottie's death? I just can't see Callie having something to do with it. Like, she was so curious about Lottie and wanted to know more about her. So she seemed really genuinely bothered when she heard the news that Lottie was dead. So, and I don't think that was an act. And I've seen some interesting theories floating around that Jeff could actually be the one responsible for Lottie's death, because I guess someone pointed out that Jeff had some scratches on his arms in this episode. And we know that Lottie scratched something when she fell down those stairs. We saw the scratch marks. And they thought maybe there could have been a struggle. I don't know if I can, like, the reasoning behind why it could be Jeff makes sense, but I don't necessarily know if I believe it. Like, somebody said that he did it because he knew that Lottie was going to mess with the dynamic between him and Shauna and Callie, and he didn't want that happening, and everything was finally starting to go good in their lives again, and Lottie comes in and she just starts to fuck everything up, so let's just get rid of her. Callie was prepared to shoot someone in the woods before Lottie's cult crumbled apart. That's very true. She was. I don't think it was Jeff. Maybe he got scratched by that cat. Oh, okay. I didn't even consider that. The only way it would make sense for it to be Sadecki to be the murderer is if Lottie threatened their safety. Where did that go? I just lost the comment. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Which the necklace on Callie could feel like a threat, but I'm not convinced. Yeah. Could Lottie's dad have killed her? You mean, could Lottie's dad have killed Lottie? I don't personally think so. I mean, he's an elderly man. It appears like he has some form of like dementia or memory issue, and that causes a lot of other issues when you have those types of problems. So I don't foresee Lottie's dad being the one that was behind that. Tyra Walters killing everyone. I will die on that hill. I have a feeling DNA results are going to be interesting. Yes, Becca. Yes. So Shauna tells Jeff and Callie that they need to pack the essentials and they need to get out of the house immediately because someone is trying to kill them. And then next we see Coach is shown to be still tied up in the animal pen with Nat checking on him and his ankle to make sure there's no infection. And personally, I kind of found this to be crueler than like them leaving him with an open gaping wound in his ankle, something that needs stitches like to prevent infection. Like I think that's crueler than just killing him. Like Nat tells him he needs to eat. And wait, sorry guys, I lost my spot. Nat tells him that he needs to eat and he questions why he's still even there, saying someone had some bullshit vision, which means he gets to live. And he says, I'm sitting in here with the rest of the meat just waiting to be carved up. That's not living, Nat. That's why I was thinking maybe you could kill me. And then we get into this they get into this conversation where Ben tells Nat like she's the leader and she always does what needs to be done. And Nat says there's no way that she's taking away anyone's hope of going home, anyone being Ben or the rest of the group. So then we see sort of like a montage of sorts where she's bringing him food over the course of a couple it has to be at least weeks. This was at the beginning of that time. And I mean, he looks rough, but he looks a lot rougher here. And also, if you look at these two pictures, Nat looks like she has more blonde hair in this picture than she does in this picture. This picture looks like her brown has grown out a little bit more, which to me indicates that there has to have been some kind of significant time that's gone by. It visibly looks as if the seasons have changed as we see Nat continue to bring Ben this food. Ben then tells Nat, I did it. I tried to kill you. I took the matches and I lit a couple of rags and I shoved them into some crack in the cabin walls. It was so fucking easy. And you could see the hurt on Natalie's face when he was saying those things. Like, you know, that at least I think that he only said those things because he wanted her to kill him. He did not burn down that cabin. And at this point, he just wants to die. Like, dying to him is better than the life that he's being afforded. And I mean, considering his circumstances, like, I don't blame the guy. I really don't. Like, you got one leg, you can't walk anymore, you're starving, you're in the middle of the wilderness. I still don't believe him. He was saying it to get her mad. Yep, agree. Sophie Thatcher has been brilliant. She absolutely crushed me this episode. She was phenomenal, like beyond phenomenal. I didn't believe Ben's confession for a moment. He waited to hear them scream, so he knew they never got out. He didn't stay to make sure. Nah, I think it's been about 6 weeks. End of October, end of August, mid-October. Yeah, that sounds like a good estimate. Yeah. And he says he tried to kill them all, but especially Natalie, which, come on. Like, Natalie's the one that he was the closest with, that he had the soft spot for. Like, that's obviously a lie. God damn it, you sentenced me to death. Now you need to keep that promise. Like, he was literally begging her at that point to kill him and put him out of his misery. And that really got to her. You could tell that she was over being the one to bear the brunt of that task of having to interact with him every day and bring him the food. And so she said that she's had enough of being the one that cares for Ben, and she's done, and now that responsibility lies with someone else. And she walks away, and I don't blame her. But Natalie being the one he's closest with would mean that he was the most betrayed by her as well. That is very true. Sophie Thatcher deserves an award for this episode. He went from begging for his life in episode 5 to begging to die in episode 6. Yeah, things changed real quick. And in episode 5, I wanted nothing more than for him to survive and make it. And as more time went on and we were seeing the gravity of his situation unfold, I was right there with Natalie. Like, I felt like what she did was kinder than having him exist the way that he was existing. Van and Ty are talking about how it's already getting cold at night and they're going to have to spend a second winter there. And Ty says, at least we're prepared. Which are they really? Like, she makes some comment about how they have food and furs and shelter. She couldn't think of an F one for that. And Van's like, fun huts, which not what would be my first thought, but they comment on the weirdness of Shauna and Melissa, and Ty says that Shauna seems happy, which, to be honest with you, I'm beginning to doubt that Shauna is even capable of feeling happy. Like, I don't know if that emotion exists within Shauna's body. I really don't. She is absolutely miserable, like, for good reason when she's a teenager, but like, it's extreme. Sam Hanratty said there's a cliffhanger at the end of this season. That would not surprise me because the past 2 seasons have ended in cliffhangers as well. Misty takes the scrapings from under Lottie's fingernails to some kind of lab for analysis and guilt trips the nerd who works there into testing the sample for her, which she pulls on his heartstrings by calling him a friend. And you could tell the guy didn't have a lot of friends by the way that he reacted to her calling him a friend. Poor guy. Misty is leading someone on. Like, that's rich. The girl who said she got turned on by knuckles and escalators in season 1. Sam Hanratty said she originally auditioned for the role for Natalie. Sammy stopped spoiling finales. Yeah, well, you know what? Simone Kessel spoiled a huge detail for the season finale of this season. And I know you know what it is because we've talked about it. I'm not going to share with everyone else because I don't want to ruin the viewing of the show for everyone else. So Walter texts Misty asking where Shauna is, and he says that she won't respond to any of his texts anymore. Why is Walter texting Shauna? What does Walter want with Shauna? Like, they had their run, they had their fun, that's over with. I don't think Walter is using the DNA to solve Lottie's murder. I think he's going to use it to find out what happened back then. Oh, okay. And Misty claps back at Walter and tells Walter that this is her investigation and he needs to back off, ass face, and put that in your pipe and smoke it, Sherlock. And she felt so cool when she said that too, which just cracked me up. Shauna, Jeff, and Callie all go to hide out. Lots of speculation Walter is related to the bird watchers. There is. I've seen that all over Reddit. It is everywhere. Like, it's such a popular theory now. I don't know if I believe that. Like, I think it's more likely that, well, I mean, if he needs a reason to mess with them, that would be a pretty good reason. Like, if he was related to those people. So, I don't know. Because he's protecting Misty and knows Shauna is killing everyone. I think that he was a kid in the wilderness too, but the Birdwatchers were his parents and the Yellowjackets don't recognize him. I believe Hilary Swank is related to those groups. Do we think Walter Tattersall is his real name? I don't know. That kind of sounds like a cover name now that you say that, Book Monkey. That's why he reacted that way when Misty talked about the trauma bond. They already have one, but she doesn't remember. Walter does all this for Misty despite it being crazy, but Misty is crazy too. Yes, that is very true. Now, doesn't Shauna think that if she wanted to be stealth, that she should go somewhere other than the one hotel that everyone knows about in town to hide out? Like, that just doesn't seem like a great idea if you don't want to be found. Jeff asks how bad the tape is, and Shauna says she has yet to listen to it, and that's the truth, because Jeff is like, I need you to tell me what's going on. I need you to tell me the truth. And DAT tapes became popular in the late 80s, but were viewed as obsolete pretty quickly after this. So where could this tape have even come from? None of them had a tape in the wilderness to even record anything. But I think at this point, we have all reached the same conclusion that the introduction of these new people at the end of the episode could be the explanation behind this mystery tape. Jeff starts talking about what it could possibly be about and says it's more than likely tied to the wilderness in some way, and someone has it out for Shauna. And Shauna tells him that she's not going to let anything happen to him or Callie, and he just needs to trust her, which I don't trust you, Shauna. I don't trust you. And honestly, Jeff, I know she's your wife, but you probably shouldn't trust her either. I think the Birdwatchers could have recorded that tape. YJ loves the Jolly Hedger and Swift Eats. Yes, they most certainly do. They most certainly do, Allison. So Shauna tells him that, like I said, she's not going to let anything happen to Callie. Shauna pretends to get lightheaded, so Jeff will leave her alone, and he says that he's going to go down to the vending machine to get some snacks for them. And am I the only one who saw this coming from a mile away when Shauna pretended that she felt dizzy? I don't think Shauna is a great actress, and she was so obvious, in my opinion, that that's what she was doing. And she calls, when Jeff leaves, she calls Van to ask about the tape and if she's able to play it, a DAT tape. And before this show, I had literally never heard of such a thing. And I grew up in an era where tape players and tapes were still used pretty regularly. So that makes me feel really old. After looking it up, DAT tapes became popular in the late 80s, like I said before. And they weren't used like in the same fashion that a regular cassette tape was. I'll be back in a jiffy. I didn't even make that connection. Did he really say I'll be back in a jiff? Oh my gosh, that would kill me. Shauna doesn't care enough to act any more earnestly. Yeah, I would agree. I kind of thought that too. Oh my god, now don't tell me she's pregnant now too. So Van tells Shauna that she does have what she needs to play the tape and says she'll bring it by in a couple of days. And Shauna's like, what part of this is an emergency? Do you not understand? We're at the Jolly Hitcher and bring it to the hotel ASAP. And they get off the phone and Van goes out to Ty and she's like, I think Shauna finally cracked. And she starts telling Ty like what Shauna asked for, about how she asked for the DAT tape player at her Jolly Hitcher hideout. And Ty makes a comment about how the curse continues. And Van kind of says like, well, you don't believe her, but like you didn't hear how scared our friend just sounded. Like we need to be there for her in this moment. Ty downplays Shauna's concerns like completely that somebody is messing with her. Why doesn't Shauna feel comfortable reaching out to Van directly, by the way? Anyone have thoughts on that? I think it's really just what Shauna said, like that they didn't have that kind of a bond. They didn't have that kind of a relationship. Like we don't ever see them have a connection in the wilderness. Like her and Ty were very close out there. So I think that like her affiliation with Van was solely because of Ty. Like I don't think if Ty was in the equation that Shauna would have any communication with Van at all. That's just my guess. Yeah, did Ty ever tell Shauna about the breaks in the freezer? I'm pretty sure. Maybe she still feels guilty for leaving Van to die in the plane. Oh, yeah, that could be. Although I don't know. I don't know if Shauna really feels guilt. Not guilt like that. Not for things like that. I feel like Van feels like she's the only one that can control Ty or Dark Ty, and even to save good Ty. So Ty orders a shit ton of room service, and Van makes a funny comment about Ty being pregnant and her knocking her up based off her room service order, which includes a steak, a rare steak, a bacon cheeseburger, 2 lobster rolls. Like, that sounds like the meal of 3 grown men, like not Thaisa. And somebody said that if you remember, call back to season 1 when Ty goes to that event where she meets Diane Raffleson with Simone. She's offered food. They give it to her. She realizes it's meat and she spits it out because she doesn't eat meat. Somebody in here says Dark Ty eats meat. Yes, another indication that we could be dealing with Dark Ty. The fact that she is just so willingly eating meat after she swore it off after they got back from the wilderness. I mean, Shauna is clearly haunted by the choices she made in the past. Some of the choices she's made in the past. Yes, I would agree with that. Ty seems entirely unbothered, which prompts Van to ask her what's with her. Like, Lottie just died, and Ty literally doesn't seem to give a shit. And Ty says that she feels like her life is falling apart. She lost her job, she lost her family. Which I thought she gave up her job. She didn't really go into detail as to how that happened. I'm kind of curious as to why she will no longer be a senator anymore. But her career, Lottie, Natalie, and she said the love of her life is battling cancer and she can't fix any of it. So she is pretending to be happy so she can feel something. She wants to feel good, even just for a little while. And Van says she understands living in the moment, but their friend is really scared and they need to be there for her. So Ty asks, who even uses DAT tapes anymore? And Van says, in her experience, super intense birders. And whoever this made her think of, it was like a light bulb went off in her head when she thought of them. And she tells Ty they need to go, like, immediately. And my first thought when she said this was honestly Misty. Like, Caligula, Misty, like, that was where my brain went. I'm not sure about everyone else, but after seeing the entire episode, do you think that Van's mind went to the people we see at the end of episode 6 who stumble upon them? My guess is that they somehow factor into the tape in some way. Like I said, none of the people in the wilderness have a way to record anything out there. So my guess is if the tape is in fact from the wilderness, that they have to factor into it for some way, like in some way. Travis approaches Akilah and tells her he's worried about her and he wants her to be safe, which I don't know about you guys, but like I'm starting to get vibes that Travis has a little crush on Akilah. And I think it's adorable. But I could be reading too far into it. He just, unless it's just him feeling guilty, but it kind of looked like he like fixed his hair before he went over to talk to her. So Shauna scared the mechanic with the description of peeling human skin. Yes, the other forever. Yes, absolutely. The audio syncs up to the scene where the birders walk up on their ceremony. Travis making the rounds. So sorry, guys. It's now Mari's turn to bring Coach his food as Nat threw in the towel. And when he realizes that it's Mari, he says, wow, things must be grim if you're subbing in. And a horrid smell catches Mari's attention. And she realizes that there's a stash of rotten food next to Coach. And that he essentially stopped eating and went on a hunger strike because he wants to die. So as his last, like, final, like, I've seen interesting thoughts from people saying that Coach went on a hunger strike as his last final act of, like, defiance. He knew the group was going to end up killing him or eating him. So he wanted to be skin and bones so they would have nothing to eat when the time came. They decide that they need to convince Coach to eat because he's their bridge home and they need him. And Mari's like, I don't think it's going to be that easy. And obviously it's not going to be easy. He's a grown man. Like, how are you going to force a grown man to eat? Not only that, when they said this, I was thinking, like, how are they going to force him to eat? They don't have a feeding tube. They don't have liquid to put in the feeding tube. So, and like, where did they get the tube that they used to shove down his esophagus to force feed him? Like, he was coughing up blood after that happened, which makes me think that like his esophagus got cut because they clearly weren't using medical equipment to do this. Wouldn't they have had the poop bucket for Coach? I thought that's what the flies were swarming around at first. I didn't notice if the woman did too, because the audio, the testing was a female voice. Yes, the testing was a female voice. Is Ashley Sutton the new pit girl? She could fit the bill. I don't know what was around the bird guy's neck. Was the recorder? I think that was a compass. I think that was some kind of a compass around his neck. The oxygen mask from the plane. Okay, that makes sense, Kimberly. That makes sense. Tubing from the coolant lines in the plane. Okay, yes, that makes sense, guys. So yeah, they need to convince Coach to eat. Walter sends Misty an apology text and he drops off 2 bags of Lottie's trash as a peace offering to her. and says maybe that she'd see something that he failed to see. I loved this moment when the guy in the limo pulls up and he rolls down the window and he's like, Misty Quigley. And she's like, who's asking? And he just looks at her and he's like, he said you'd be like this. Like, perfect reply to Misty. And leave it to Walter to hand deliver 2 bags of trash using a limousine for Misty to look through. Like, always going to the extreme lengths to make her happy. Like, it was so funny. Travis asks Nat how bad things really are with Coach and says, what if what Akio saw was just bullshit and that didn't mean anything? Which to me, it seems like there's some doubt creeping into his mind about everything. And he's starting to feel a little bit of guilt about pointing the finger at Akila to Lottie and having Lottie set her sights on Akila. Van goes through her stuff and finds the tape player. And as she's looking through the box, the power kind of flickers and an old clear phone in the box starts ringing, and she answers it and hears what sounds like Ty. And it's very staticky, very fuzzy. You can't really, like, it's not clear. All I made out was help, that she said was help. My question is, why did she not tell Ty that this happened? Like, why not clue Ty in to the fact that a phone that wasn't even plugged into a power source just rang and I heard you on the other end when you're clearly right here? Why keep this a secret with everything else that's been going on? I can't help. Yes, thank you, Allison. I couldn't remember. And the only explanation that I can come up with as to why she's not cluing her in is because she's starting to suspect that something is going on with Ty. And I think that this phone call was Ty's regular personality trying to break through and make contact with Van and tell Van, I need help. My alter is in control and is calling all the shots and I can't fix it. I can't do anything. Please help me. Like, that's how I took it. She knows what's up. She's just waiting for confirmation. I think she suspected it for a while, but she's been enjoying her time with her too. Yeah, I think she suspected it because, I mean, doesn't she ask, no, wait. No, wrong thought. Sorry, guys. She knows what's up. Walter must have a tracker on Misty. He hacked her phone when he picked it up at the bar. Something that's interesting about the bar scene with Misty and when Walter comes to pick her up. When Walter comes to pick her up, he says that the man working at the bar went through her phone and called all her contacts in her phone, and nobody answered until he got to W. I've seen speculation that that's a lie because the man who plays the bartender also happens to be the same man that Shauna has the monologue with last season about peeling human skin off of him, that worked at the car lot that Shauna's car got taken to when it was stolen. So I've seen people theorizing that that's not a coincidence. Like, that was on purpose, that this man played both characters and it's for a reason. And that has something to do with it. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but are we sure they're not just recycling extras? That's what I thought. Oh, crotchier burn. Yeah, that's what I thought, Book Monkey. But so Misty, to keep going, Misty goes through Lottie's trash and finds takeout boxes that catch her attention and make her question why Lottie would have eaten at this particular place. Misty says, like, it has like a C health rating from the city, and Lottie's there's no vegetarian options on the menu, so why would Lottie go there? And when she goes to check it out, who does she find? No one other than Lisa. Lottie and her Chinese food. Yeah, I know. Lisa. So had that on my bingo card. Lisa returned. So point for Emily. Misty is a damn good detective. She sure is, Melissa. She is the best. She is the best. Well, how did he find her to drop off the garbage bags? That is a great point. That is a really good point that I did not consider. I knew Lisa would be back somehow. How would Lottie find Lisa in the city? I don't know. I don't know how she would find her. Unless Lisa left like a forwarding address when she was like, peace out, Colt. This is where I'm going. I don't know. Walter is scary. Yeah, Walter, I'm becoming more and more suspicious of Walter as time goes by. And I like really look at things and I rewatch and I consider certain details. Like my suspicion of him heightens with each watch for sure. Shauna, Callie, and Jeff are watching TV at the hotel when Ty and Van call her, and Shauna tells them the truth, actually, that she's going to find out what's on this tape, which shocked me that she was actually truthful with them. Like, I couldn't believe it. And this leads to she tells Jeff that he needs to stay with Callie to keep her safe. And Callie kind of says that's bullshit. Like, I'm not a little kid. You don't have to protect me. And Shauna and Jeff both say, like, we've done a really shitty job at being parents. Like, we need to do better. And Callie takes this moment to hug Shauna. And as she's hugging Shauna, she slips her cell phone into Shauna's purse. Sneaky Callie. And it's recording. Very sneaky Callie. Did she not think about what would happen if her mom found that phone, though? Like, she clearly isn't as afraid of her mom as the rest of the world, but she should be. She should be. So yeah, we see Callie stick the phone in there. And then we see Misty approach Coach and ask him as a friend if he will eat. And he tells her to go away. And she says, you've left me with no choice. And I love the Sudeikis, our reality show lovers, always watching the Divorcee show. Yeah, that was really funny. The show that they were watching was great. Wonder why the paparazzi is not following them around after all the incidents at Lottie's commune makes the news. I kind of wondered the same thing. Like, don't you think that would have made the news? Like, what happened up there? Like, with people that went through something as traumatic as what the Yellowjackets went through. I feel like that would be newsworthy. But so as Misty says, you've left me with no choice, we see a group of people with Misty come in wearing these masks. And this is when they take the tube and they shove it down Ben's throat and they force feed him. And these masks are similar to the ones that we see in the Cannibal Council scene in the first episode. And this is the first time that we've seen anything like this utilized in the teen timeline, which I found very interesting. But here we know who they are. The one in the pink is Shauna. Obviously, the one in the middle is Misty. And the one holding the water bottle is Van. So there's no mystery as to who is who here. So, like, are they going to keep wearing the same masks? Or, like, are the masks going to change hands too? I cannot wait to listen to the rest of that tape because the recording was 43 minutes long. Actually, I'm pretty sure the tape was like 14 minutes long because when they start it, there's a start time and it shows the length of the tape. So I'm pretty sure it wasn't that long. The showrunners are really big reality TV watchers. I love that they include it. Yeah, that was so hard to watch. Yeah, that was really hard to watch. Travis had a mask too. Yes, he did. So after they force feed him, Nat goes in to see Coach and he makes a joke with her that the service around here sucks and he's throwing up blood and he asks her why she can't just let him die. And she says she just can't. And Coach kind of goes a little bit hysterical and starts to laugh. And you can tell at that point, he has clearly given up on the idea of life. Like, he does not give a fuck anymore what happens to him. Lottie is praying to the trees, trying to get them to talk to her when she's interrupted by Aquila, who says she needs to see if there's anything she missed, aka go back to the caves again. I feel like Aquila has like put this burden on herself. Oh, the 43 minutes would be the whole time Callie's phone was recording. Yes. Okay, Callie's phone did record for 43 minutes. I'm sorry, I misread what you said. But I feel like Aquila is like viewing these visions as like her being like integral to what's happening, and like she needs to interpret these visions and understand them, and like that is so crucial to them getting out and getting home. And I feel like she's starting to put this pressure on herself to understand things, and when she's not, it's making her get flustered and she doesn't know what to do. Shauna goes and meets with Van and Ty, and they begin to play the tape. We hear at the beginning of the tape, when they turn it on, we hear testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, what is this? And then it cuts to Misty following and approaching Lisa. And Lisa tells Misty that she's really sorry and that she can have the money back, but just to leave her bike alone. And Misty's like, oh, your bike's fine. And then she just like, and just shoves it right over. But Misty says she's just trying to figure out who killed Lonnie, which kind of makes Lisa laugh. And Lisa and Misty, and she asks Misty if Misty thinks that she killed Lonnie. And Misty points out that Lonnie took all her money and her freedom and her clothes. And Lisa said she was in a cult that ruined her life and she doesn't recommend it. But murder, not all of us turn our trauma into stabby, which I really like that line. Thought that was a good line. And Lisa agrees to tell Misty what she knows, but only in a public setting in order to protect herself, because Misty literally just tried to inject her with fentanyl. So not sure I'd be gung-ho on meeting up with the woman who tried to intentionally OD me and kill me. But props to Lisa for being so cool about it. We then hear sounds of what sound like animal noises howling and screaming on the tape that they're listening to. And Van then says that the only people who even know about this are them or dead. And Ty says, so that means that they destroy the tape, which makes Van point out that that's probably not the only copy of the tape. Shauna says it's obviously a threat, but right now it's just a threat to her, which makes them ask her if she thinks that it's still Misty, and she says no. So Shauna then discovers that Callie's phone is in her bag, and she says that she needs to go and that it's an emergency. And Ty's like, what the fuck? And she takes the DAT player and she just leaves. Like, Shauna just like wreaks havoc, I swear. Like, she comes in, she takes what she wants, she leaves. She just like is like a bulldozer almost. Sam, I think you're completely right. A lot of people on YouTube have been thinking that Issa has been present since the car crash with Simone. Yeah. So Shauna just like is like bulldozing over everybody and doing whatever the fuck she wants. But like I said, what did Kelly think was going to happen when her mom realized that she had been recording her conversation, especially a conversation involving the context of what they were discussing? So then Aquila goes back into the cave and has a weird vision involving a bear with 3 eyes. And she gets very upset and starts apologizing to Lottie for not understanding what it means. And what do you all interpret this vision to mean with the bear with the 3 eyes? I saw a really interesting theory on Reddit that the 3 eyes on the bear's head could symbolize the 3 hikers or people that they encounter at the end of the episode. And somebody also pointed out that Travis's Travis's like little drawing or whatever that he made that had the 3 people below the one person laying on like a structure of some kind, that it could have been referring to that. So I don't know, but like, what do you all make of that vision with the bear? Like, I personally like don't know what to make of it. It was kind of confusing. It was meshed in with images of their camp with no one there. So like, what does that mean? Somebody says the eyes are the 3 birders. Yeah, that's yep. Yeah. Does anyone know what kind of bear that was? It looks so weird. The Dan, the editor that I just spoke with, said it was a stop motion bear, or like it almost looked like a claymation bear to me, like a clay figurine almost. I think it symbolizes Ben was going to die the way the bear in 110 died, and that Aquila does have the third eye sense. Oh, okay. I saw 2 hikers. Did I miss one? It has been confirmed that there are 3 people. Yes, it's been confirmed. I think the sickly bear represents Ben and the 3 eyes represent the bird watchers. They may have seen a lot more than we think. Okay. All right. This is why I love chatting with you guys, because when I don't have a certain thought on something, I know that one of you will. Lottie saw what we think was a different bird watcher first, and that's who she ran after. Yes, she saw one before we see the man say what the fuck when he sees Ben's head. I think it symbolizes Lottie, but I also think it's our first clue that the hallucinations don't necessarily mean anything at all, that the girls are projecting meaning into them. So next we see Nat gets up. Like, she has some realization of some kind, and she goes and she grabs a knife, and Travis sees this happening, and he gets up and he tries to interfere and stops her and asks her why she has the knife. And this part broke me, like when they had this interaction and Natalie says to him, you don't need to be go back to bed, you don't need to be here, you don't need to be a part of this, just go somewhere else. And he pleads with her, telling her, you know, they won't forgive you. And she says she doesn't care. I have to do this if nobody else will. And Travis relents and says that he'll keep an eye out for her and keep watch, but she needs to hurry because it's almost sunrise. And I knew from the moment that they showed her laying down that that was what was going to happen. I think we could all sense that that's where this was going, that that's what was going to happen to Ben. But watching it play out, the way that it played out was just so sad. So she goes in, and Coach gets startled by her presence, but he quickly realizes like why she's there. Like, you can visibly see the relief like wash over his face when he sees the knife in her hand. And he pleads with her to do it. Pleads with her. And right before she does it, and she plunges the knife into his heart, he says, thank you. When he said thank you, literal sobs. Like, I was so distraught. Like, I didn't realize how much this death was going to upset me, but I was nowhere near this upset when they showed us Lottie at the bottom of those stairs. I think it was also just the way that it was presented to us, the whole scene, all the elements involving it. Both Sophie and Steven's performances were top notch, and like you could feel their sadness. You could feel it through the screen. So the girls, specifically Misty, realize what Nat did when she walks out of the tent holding a bloody knife, and she drops to the ground. And Misty in the background yelling, "Murderer! Arrest her!" which made me chuckle because it was just such a stark contrast to like such a serious moment. And then you hear Travis say something like, "We can talk about this." I was shocked watching the scene, especially because they didn't make it happen at the end of the episode. Yeah, I watched the episode, and after she stabbed him, like, I checked the time that was left because I was like, there has to be a minute left. Like that has to be the end. Like there's no way that that's not the end of the episode. I was really surprised by that. So I love how Danny refrained from calling the people bird watchers. LOL. Yeah, I'll get to that in a little bit. But so Misty yells murder, arrests her, and they all begin asking Nat like what she did, why she did it, and she says she kept a promise. And Misty goes over and spends a few minutes with Ben's body, crying over him, and she kisses him, which was kind of creepy, but expected, like very Misty. And she starts to get really emotional, and mid cry, she smacks herself in the face and is like, snap out of it. So you can see that Misty is handling this death a lot different than Shauna handled Jackie's death, because Misty is not going to envision herself talking to a dead person. Misty got her kiss finally. Yeah. Steven Kruger called them scientists. Yes, he did. He did. If the scary creature noise is due to the birders, they've been in the area for a long time. Didn't the girls first hear that noise in episode 1? They did. Yes, they first heard that sound in episode 1. So they've been hearing that episode for a while. Yeah. So Nat tells them that it was the right thing to do because Coach was suffering and had been, and the others begin to physically gang up on Nat and push her around. Like Jen shoves her to the ground. And I saw the funniest comment on Reddit about that. It was like, Jen shoves Natalie, instantly wants Jen to become Pit Girl. Only the girls with speaking roles are allowed to be physically violent with each other. Stay in your lane, Jen. So the new peeps are wandering around in the woods at night without any weapons, bears, wolves, teens, girls. Yeah, well, they didn't know about the girls, so they didn't know they needed any weapons, I don't think. But Ty says that they're going to have another trial, to which Shauna says, absolutely not. She's obviously guilty. She just confessed. We put her in charge, and instead of doing what was right for us, she did what she wanted to do. I think it's obvious what happens now. And if it were not for Lottie in this moment, I firmly believe that Natalie would have been dead, and we would have never seen Juliette Lewis in the adult timeline because Shauna would have killed her in that moment. And I think that Lottie knew this too, which is why she did what she did, because she steps forward in that moment and says, Shauna will lead us. Looks like there's a new sheriff citizen in town. And we all saw this coming. Like, it was suspected and only a matter of time, given how envious Shauna was of Nat and her position of power. And now she's getting her wish. Like, she got what she wanted. So, like, what made Lottie step forward and say Shauna? Like, other than that? Or was it solely for that reason? Did she know that Nat was as good as dead if she somehow did not defuse that situation and fast? Lottie was so smart to do that. Yes. Misty wanted revenge too. Oh, yeah, she absolutely wanted revenge, because we see her ask, like, Natalie's not going to get punished. I get that you guys are angry, but we are still a team, and we can't let this break us. When people die out here, we honor them. So tonight, we'll honor Coach Scott too. We'll give the wilderness what it wants. Where did these unifying words of wisdom come from? Because she clearly has been waiting in the wings for this moment, and now she's in charge and in her element. But why is Shauna suddenly singing a different tune in regards to the wilderness? She has never believed in it before. So why now all of a sudden is she saying that they're going to give the wilderness what it wants? Because she thinks that's what everyone else wants to hear? Because she thinks that's what everyone else wants? Like, what? Like, it just, the only reason that makes sense to me is because she wanted to be in power, and she will appease them to keep that role. Like, she will do what the masses want because she is power hungry. Like, her face changed quickly too. Honor him by snacking on him with his head just chilling there. Misty asked, what about Nat? And Shauna says Nat will prepare the feast and be the one to cut up Coach's body. And okay, this is the first time that we see them eat someone not for survival means. They ate Ben for what reason? Like, what was their reasoning? Because they weren't hungry. They had food, like you all are saying in the chat, to honor him. But I'm pretty sure he would want to be honored in another way. Like, I don't think that eating him, like, I guess, like, that's how they can justify it in their warped wilderness minds. But so then we see Shauna tell Callie that they need to have a chat, and Shauna asks Callie why she tried recording Shauna. And what Shauna didn't realize, though, is that she didn't actually 100% delete the recording, and Callie was able to recover it and restore it. Shouldn't someone as paranoid as Shauna, like, know better than to just simply delete it from your regular files, and that you have to permanently delete it, like, from the deleted files now for it to be 100% gone? Or is that just like an old person thing to not know those kinds of things? I mean, I'm 36 and I consider myself to be pretty technologically challenged, but even I know that. I feel like that's a pretty basic thing to know. Millennial move. She's not very tech savvy. Yeah, me either. Old person thing. I don't blame Callie for setting that up, that recording. Her mom lies to her often, only comes clean about something, leaves a lot. Yeah, no, I get it. I get why she did it. She wants to know what's going on. Shocked that Shauna threatened Callie. You're shocked? I'm not. Nothing with Shauna shocks me at this point anymore. Shauna building alliances when she became leader, keeping believers of the wilderness on her side. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Shauna will drive Jeff away. I hope not. I hope not. But so then Shauna tells Callie to, like you just said, she kind of threatens her and tells Callie, like, go with your dad, like, leave before I do something I'm going to regret. Shauna puts a piece of cloth over Coach's face for Nat to make it easier for her to have to chop up his body, and tells her that this should make it easier for her, and hands Nat the knife to get to work. And let me say that seeing this moment makes the moment in season 1 where Natalie offers to help Shauna cut up Adam's body in a whole new light. Like, just frames everything in a whole new light for me. Shauna will never hurt her child. She's trying to scare Callie to make her stop. Yeah, okay. I'll agree with that. Full circle moment. Yes, definitely full circle moment. Lisa tells Misty about the last time that she saw Lottie, and about how Lottie apologized for hurting her and left her 50 grand as a tip that she withdrew from the bank. And Misty asked Lottie, like, so she just hands you 50 grand and you don't ask any questions? Like, that's it? And Lisa basically says that when bad stuff happened to her, she stopped asking why. And finally, one good thing happened to her, so she didn't ask why, and she just went with it for once. I do think Shauna will be an extremely powerful leader, not in a good way. She's suffering from postpartum psychosis, and she is extremely violent. She's going to push the group to new levels. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, Sam. So Lisa tells Misty that Natalie was... Oh, wait, hold on a second. Before I say that, how do you guys feel about Lisa being the reasoning behind the money? Like, how does that sit with you? Like, I know a lot of people speculated it and it makes sense and it's like a loose end tied up, but like, were you hoping for something more rewarding or different? I don't know how I feel about it. Like, it's whatever for me, I guess. But Lisa tells Misty if she's determined to go down that path, that she should start with her friends, and more specifically Ty, who Lottie saw the day that she died. Lisa said she saw them together outside the restaurant. And then in the next scene, we see Ty jolt upright in bed. Do I have a picture of this? I think I do. Yep, here we go. Jolt upright in bed and saying, Van, please, you got to help me, which rightfully scares the shit out of Van. And It's, at first, I perceived this as Dark Ty taking over, but now, going back and watching it again, I think it's the opposite. I think that this was, like, good Ty breaking through and trying to voice to Van that she needs her help, that Dark Ty is in charge and calling the shots, and she needs her to help her snap out of it and fix it and make it stop because she doesn't know how to help herself at this point. And also right before this happens, we see Van laying in bed, and she's Googling something, and she's Googling the effect that humidity has on DAT tapes. So, or Googling something along the lines of like how long DAT tape lasts in the elements, which leads me to believe that the recording is in fact from the wilderness, because what other reason would she have to be to look something up, like look something like that up if the tape wasn't from out in the wilderness? Ty is terrifying. The two Ty are fighting for control. Yeah, it's strange to me. She had so many followers. Why only pay one? Well, Lisa's the one who witnessed. Yeah, Lisa's the one who witnessed murder and all that. So maybe that's why. Like hush money almost. The tape was in Nat's storage unit. But so Misty sends Walter the DNA results to see if he may be able to get something out of it that she couldn't, because Walter actually has DNA samples for comparison. Mari approaches that, and in this moment, I very much felt like Mari was saying something, but she was trying to say something else, like indirectly. She kind of said that she thought, like, she started off with like what you did for Coach, and then she trails off, and Nat says like, I know, and Mari says like, you shouldn't have done that, and Nat says, I know. But you can tell that Mari is acknowledging that Natalie did the right thing and she admires her for what she did, which really surprised me to hear this coming from Mari of all people. Like Mari, the character that gets under my skin more than any other character on this show. Is she going to like make me not like think she's the most annoying person ever? Is it possible? Is she gonna redeem herself in some fashion? I would be shocked. I've gained so much love for Mari in these past 2 seasons. Yeah, Alexa has really outdone herself this season. Her performance has been stellar, like so good. I've loved Mari's arc this season. I can't complain about it at all. Wonder if Mari tells them Coach made her hot chocolate. Why doesn't she ever say that? She's growing on you. Yeah, I think she kind of is. I think so. But so then we see Misty begin humming. And what I believe she was humming is Breakfast at Tiffany's. Lottie begins to say, this is all wrong and this is not how it's supposed to happen. And she begins to hear imaginary laughter all around. And she begins to scream at seemingly nothing. And then we hear the weird sounds coming from the forest again. Like Lottie screams and then the noise happens. And then Lottie screams and then the noise happens. And then she tells everybody to start singing. And everybody else starts screaming and encourages all the other girls to do the same. And we still start hearing these weird screeches that seem to be aggravated when they make this noise. And all the screaming and through all the screaming and dancing around the fire, Lottie sees a figure through the fire walking away. My question here is, what exactly does Lottie see in those moments before they realize there are other people out there? What exactly is wrong? What isn't supposed to happen? Like, what wasn't right? Like, something about what they were doing was bothering her. Was it that they were eating Coach? Was it the way they went about it? Like, what about that scenario did Lottie think was wrong? Out of nowhere, a man and a woman appear slowly approaching, and they say hello. And the man looks down. Do I have a picture of that? Oh, I sure do. And the man looks down at the table and sees Coach's head just chilling on the table on a platter, and rightfully says, What the fuck? So, and then it cuts to black and the episode is over. But when I tell you that was my reaction to seeing these people was what the fuck, I was like, what is actually happening right now? What is going on? I was so confused. My money, though, is on these people having something to do with the strange noises that they've been hearing. These people obviously aren't responsible for their rescue. So what ends up happening to this man and this woman? Do they end up killing them? Which, I mean, that's my logical guess, because we know that there's another winter, at least 3 months before they're actually rescued. And I'm kind of confused as to like how that's going to work out. My guess at this point as to who the mystery man and woman are would be some kind of scientist investigating some kind of phenomenon in the wilderness. They would explain why there was a small group of them, and it would just make the most sense. Maybe it has something to do with like all the other weird shit that's been happening out there, like the red water and possibly like the heavy metal theory that's gone around and like the birds falling from the sky. Like there have been lots of weird instances that have happened while they've been in the wilderness. So maybe they're tied to something along those lines. The gas. Yes, that's another one, Allison. There's probably another month left before rescue. No, there has to be more than a month because if they're in October, they were rescued around January of 98. So they've got more than a month. I was like, oh my God, they're getting rescued. Then I realized we're months away from that. Yeah, that was my thought too when I first saw those people was, oh my God, rescue. And then I thought, and I was like, nope, definitely not. Nope, not happening yet. I'm also thinking that these people are toast and not long for this world. I mean, look at what they stumbled upon. Like, they literally came across a group of teenage girls in the middle of nowhere dancing around a fire with a man's head on a plate. A lot of us think they'll be rescued by people who go searching for the strangers. That would make sense. Yes, that would make a ton of sense. But how was Coach supposed to be the bridge home anyway? Honestly, I'm relieved that Nat put him out of his misery. What was happening to him was legit worse than just watching him die. But wow, like I said, I utterly sobbed when Nat put that knife through his heart. I've seen a lot of talk about him being the bridge still panning out. Some are saying that if Natalie hadn't killed Coach, then these hikers would have never stumbled upon them and set off the chain of events that we're about to witness unfold. So now we don't know if these people are responsible for their rescue directly. My guess is no. But like you were just saying, Allison, it could be possible that a search party ends up coming to look for them and finds the Yellowjackets during their search. Therefore, Ben would technically still be the reason behind they were found in the long run. I've watched this episode quite a few times now between my various rewatches to prepare for this show. And let me just say that Coach's death made me sob like nothing else. Like, not even Sean losing the baby. Don't get me wrong, that was devastating, but this touched me on another level. To see what had become of him in his last moments of life truly broke my heart. And to see how he literally begged for death truly broke my heart. To see that it was Natalie that had to be the one to end things for him truly broke my heart. No wonder why her scars were so deep. Just look at the things that she had to do out there for them. Whether they agreed with this decision or not, Nat was not wrong. He was suffering. The scientists smelled the Ben BBQ for sure. Yeah, that would be my guess too. Because in a place as remote as where they are, a smell like that is going to stick out like a sore thumb. Which also would make sense how the adults gave Nat credit for them being rescued. Yes, it is crazy to think that women will almost be inducted into the group. It seems like she is pick girl, but it seems too obvious. I think they're going to be a twist more than them just dying. I think that could be possible, JD. But another interesting observation I had this episode, pink Converse sighting, guys. Mari was wearing the pink Converse sneakers in this episode when it's her turn to bring Coach the food. You can visibly see them on her feet as she is walking over to him. So now we've seen the sneakers on both Aquila and Mari at this point. So just a little interesting tidbit. Is it possible that we have met the real Pit Girl? Let's be real. We know that these people can't be responsible directly for their rescue. There's just still too much time left in the wilderness for them to be behind them getting found. So this adds some new faces into the wilderness story. And the only way I see these people factoring into them being found is, like I said, the search party is sent out to look for the hikers, and it leads them to find the group in the process. I can't see a second group of people happening upon them randomly that have nothing to do with rescuing them. Like, no, just can't. The third scientist is going to take out a couple of the girls during the hunt. They know what it's like to starve during winter. Hopefully they make it last a while. It's winter, so they'd have layers on. But another question I have, like I said a little while ago, why eat Coach? They clearly didn't do it because they were starving. Like, this was just to honor him. Like, he was disgusted by them and the fact that they ate Jackie. And he did everything in his power not to do that. I mean, he ended up hiding in a cave, so he wouldn't be next on the menu for obvious reasons. Did they just do this so his body wouldn't go to waste? Or, like, Misty finally got that high-calorie butt meat, though, guys. Like, she got her meat that she was bragging about eating when he went to jump off the shit cliff in season 2. So I've said it so many times now that there's very few things that could completely ruin the show for me. One surefire way to do that would be to bring in a bunch of random people into the story. And so my initial reaction when I saw these people at the end of this episode was disappointment. But I have high hopes. If these people are scientists out there researching something, it's not as random as some hikers just like out for a stroll and finding them, or other people actually coexisting in the wilderness and they just didn't know it. This could actually end up working out pretty nicely. TBD at the moment, but we will revisit. I think the main traveler will die and some of the girls might split with the woman third traveler, and that's where the two factions forms and hunts come in. Like, what if Travis gets someone just before rescuing the child was given up for adoption or hid it and married? Wait, what about a child? I had to have missed something. I'm seeing something. That comment's confusing me. Sorry, guys. I've seen it gaining traction within the fandom that it's possible that these mysterious bird watchers, scientists, mystery people could be tied to Walter somehow, with a good portion of people believing it to be possible that they were actually Walter's parents, which would be why he had possession of the tape, sent it to Shauna, and has it out for the women. I don't personally buy this theory. I think that there could be something sinister to Walter, but I don't think that he's a child of these people. I just don't see that. Things just got real interesting real fast within the last 10 minutes of this last episode alone. Like I said before we saw this episode, buckle up, guys. I heard we are in for quite the ride from here to the finale. Something tells me we haven't seen the last death of the season yet either. The cast has said the body count this season is very high, and so far we've only witnessed 2 people lose their lives. Which death hit you harder personally? Lottie or Travis? Or not Travis, Ben. Sorry, I saw Travis in the comments. I have to say Ben, hands down for myself, just for the fact that Natalie was the one who actually had to do the deed, and it's hard to imagine how she lived with that. Next week's episode is titled Croak. Anyone want to take a stab as to what that could possibly have to do with? I'm so excited to see the rest of the season, specifically the next episode. But this episode was by far my favorite episode of the season, and I have a feeling that it's only going to get better from here on out. I know the rest of the fandom is dying for it to be Thursday at midnight already, and same. big same. If we were giving out Emmys for that episode, mine would hands down go to Sophie Thatcher. She absolutely broke me with that performance. The noise in the wilderness is frogs. Well, the episode is titled Croak. So that would logically make some sense, Carrie. I could get behind that. I know bullfrogs make some crazy noises. So that is another possibility that I don't think a lot of people considered before. And it's a very interesting one. But yes, bravo to both Sophie and Stephen. They made that scene really beautiful and moving and heartbreaking. And they did, like, they gave Ben the ending that he deserved. It was very well done. Carrie showed a video of a frog making that kind of noise. Oh, I didn't know that in the video the frog made that noise. That's even more interesting that we have evidence of frogs making noises like that. Okay. Interesting. Well, we will find out in a few days. But as always, thank you so much, guys, for buzzing in and chatting and hanging out with me every week. Chatting with all of you about this show is truly one of the highlights of my week every week. I look forward to Sunday night so much, and it was so great to have Danny in here. He gave us lots of information and insight, and I love being able to share those kinds of things with all of you. I'll be back here next week, same time, same place, to discuss the 7th episode. Can you guys believe it that we're already going on episode 7? But yeah, so not much more to go this season. So again, thanks, guys. I hope to see you next week. And with that, until I spill again.